competition for little kids. She wasn't sure if it was her imagination, but she thought she heard a hint of irritation in his voice, and she wondered again why he'd bothered coming with her to an event that clearly wasn't his thing.
I was beginning to wonder if you were coming back.
If he was that worried about how long it took to get his hot dog or not getting his mustard, he could go with her next time, instead of letting her go alone. The line was long.
The game's starting again,
he said with about as much enthusiasm as he'd announce he was making an appointment for a dental cleaning. Reyna and Lucas had been dating for several months, so when he'd heard about the hockey fundraiser, he'd assumed they'd go together. That had surprised her, since he didn't care about sports, but maybe he was trying to support her interests, which was nice. She'd originally planned to take her friend's daughter, Sophie, to her first hockey game, but she'd caved and invited her boyfriend instead. Boyfriend. She was still having some trouble wrapping her head around the word, though she supposed that's exactly what Lucas was. She'd met his sister, and she was supposed to go with him to see his parents for Thanksgiving. It was a lot for so early in their relationship, but she'd had a run of bad luck with men before she met him, so she was going with it. He lived 20 minutes away, which worked for her. They could get together easily, but not so easily she felt suffocated by him. He was a tax accountant she'd met through a recommendation when she and her mom needed advice after her dad passed away, and he dressed nicely. His sandy blonde hair was always perfectly cut, and he had great manners. He was stable and nice, and would probably be a solid family man. That made him a strong contender for being Mr. Right. That stability that Brady mocked was one of the things she found most attractive about him, because that's what she was looking for in the father of the children she was more than ready to have. He'd be patient and help with homework, especially the math. He was the kind of man who'd make pancakes on the weekend and show up to parent-teacher conferences. He'd be the rock of their family, and when it came to men, that was a priority for her. He was pretty much the opposite of Brady Nash, she thought, as she took the last bite of her hot dog, and then she was annoyed she'd allowed him to creep into her thoughts again. "Having fun?" she asked Lucas, wanting to distract herself.
I always have fun when I'm with you,
he said, giving her a smile that lasted only a few seconds, because the crowd was standing to cheer as a couple's 50th anniversary was announced on the big screen.
It's very loud, though.
That's part of the fun. Everybody was clapping and cheering for the couple, so Reyna did the same. Lucas was rubbing his hands together, as if he was nervous instead of clapping, but she didn't think anything of it. He was probably trying to decide how long he had to stay before he could suggest they sneak out, since sports weren't exactly his thing. She was pondering whether she wanted popcorn or nachos next, because the junk food really was the best part of any sporting event, when she heard her name echoing around the arena and realized it had come from the PA system. Looking up, she was horrified to see her face on the giant screens suspended from the ceiling. Yes, that was definitely her. Long red hair and a ponytail pulled through a Boston Bruins ball cap because she didn't have a hat for the team she was watching. Her blue eyes wide and practically unblinking. And that was definitely her Bishop's Auto Care sweatshirt. And she was even more horrified when Lucas grinned at the camera before getting down on one knee next to her, which wasn't easy considering how tight the seating was. Cheers from the crowd rose to a deafening level as he tugged on her hand, urging her to look at him instead of the screen. "Oh, no. Please don't do this," she whispered, but he seemed intent on ignoring her. Or maybe he couldn't hear her, but he should have been able to read the plea on her lips.
Reyna Bishop, I love you. Will you marry me?
He asked as he opened a box and showed her one of the most gorgeous rings she'd ever seen. In her peripheral vision, she saw the words flashing on the jumbotron, "Reyna, will you marry me?" "We've only been dating 3.5 months, she said, trying to make sense of it.
"And I knew from our very first date that you were the one for me."
Their first date had been watching the town's 4th of July fireworks display, where he'd bought them each a caramel apple. It had been an odd and unsexy food choice for a first date, but he'd seemed nice, so she'd seen him again. And he'd kept on seeming nice, so she'd kept on seeing him. She didn't want to marry him. Well,